back with the CEP of this week or this month with the topic of human development, personal development, and skill set. The last time we talked about the worldview, which is something the blend between philosophy and human development and how we construct our theory, how we construct our mind, and how we construct the way we're seeing things, explaining things. So what that one is supposed to be on philosophy, but it's do more human approach than the idea approach of things. And I just realized that actually when we want to talk about like everything else of the topics, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about nonprofit, we talk about philosophy, sociology, psychology, educations, project planning, even finance and other stuff. We have different way to construct that. I have different way to construct the ideas when I create this kind of program, and I forgot to tell everybody about that. Even I do mention it somehow last year about the reading skill, scientific reading skill, and scientific data collection skill. It's just personally working in science fields, and I think it's have really clear structures of thinking and reasoning and analyzing the data and make sure you double check of your self bias and your self falsifiable idea that might be manipulated data and construct a wrong conclusion. And I think it's important, and it does help me a lot in personal development and worldview construct and learning in the new skill of the idea. So, and I think it's important, like modern human development skill that we should have. That is scientific thinking skill. Normally, what we have, and I do take a look about online courses, but general speaking, what we learn and what we can train ourselves is critical thinking, but what we normally do. And after go through this, I believe you're going to see that scientific thinking is not really different with critical thinking, but it's more structural and regulation of the critical thinking, I want to say. And it's helped you understand the logic, bring it into work, analyze it, the data, remove the bias, and construct something that really generate to the real knowledge that is the major idea in their society now. That is the major idea and foundations and explorations and new technology movement data source for decision making process is all based on scientific materials and evidence, then philosophy, then mysticism and religion belief or cultural standpoint. So in the modern time, and especially work on sustainability and education, scientific thinking is something you are looking for, easier to practice than the critical thinking in general. So that pretty much is the objective today. We try to see what a scientific thinking is and how hard it is. Is that possible? Is that for everybody? And how we construct it and how we can apply it in the real world. Let's see what we have in here. So, when the idea of scientific thinking, we always think that is something for scientists, but actually it's not. With Dunbar, Kevin, and Cloud, that started in 2012 about scientific thinking, which is really huge. It's on Oxford Handbook, and it is really high quality study. And they do have literature review for long history of scientific thinkings for 400 years ago, seen the emerging in science in 17th century, and until now, when it's so super developed and have some issue, but it's still moving on and try to emerge out of the field of the society, and that what we develop the scientific thinking. Now we see that scientific thinking first is a thinking in the content of science, of course. The majority, someone would call themselves scientists, got to have scientific thinking and practice the scientist thinking into the real value that construct their role as a scientist. So whatever related to science, people working there, gotta talk about a scientific way of thinking, and that's pretty clear. Boundaries with when you bring up mystic mysticism, okay, way of thinking, religion of thinking, which is belief without answer, mysticism, and which is a little bit related to conspiracy theory, which is no evidence. I just believe it. I just it might in the mystic. You can never find the evidence for that because the government, the hidden world order, whoever the aliens hidden hide it from us. So that's why it's mystic. But believe me, I have some logic up there. Well, it's hard that way with scientific thinking. So it's not called scientific thinking. And of course, emotion, bringing too much emotion in scientific thinking is not the way it is. That's why it's a boundary. When we talk about science, we got to use scientific thinking. When we talk of something, we based on a science, we're gonna move into some direction with scientific thinking. You just cannot move everywhere, whatever variance, and go to whatever kind of the religion and emotions and something mysticism, all kind of stuff. You not go through. Scientific thinking have their patterns, have the structure, and have the staff. That is it. But we do have another practical model of scientific thinking, which is applied for our daily life. This is the second part. The set of reasoning process that we normally practice in the field of science. But if you're not scientist but you still apply on this process of induction, deduction, experimental design, causal reasoning, concept formation, hypothesis testing, you basically practice scientific thinking. You just not do it all the time, like for a scientist for a living. But if you practice that somehow you're doing scientific thinking, have a clear critical thinking and well-structured critical thinking of the way you consume the data and conceive the worlds. We see that the symbol of that deduction, abduction, and induction, which is really famous. K, swan and black swan. That's why they called hypothesis of a black swan in science. So deduction is mean we have first hypothesis, all swans are white and Daisy is one, right? So the conclusion is Daisy is white. That's why the deduction is this assumption, right? Scientific assumption. You can call hypothesis. Second, going through the same conclusion normally is going through the literature, since literature review of study for hundreds of years. And they call abduction like this. All the swans are white. So Daisy is white, right? Based on the objective of the Daisy. So Daisy is one. But that's also a different way of the concluding the answer of that. But we have another one in here. It's called induction. Daisy is one swan and white. Danny is one and white. Dante is one and white, and so on for thousands or 10,000 of sample of swan and white. So we concluded all swan is white. That's how we normally see it now. You collect data and you collect enough population sample and you conclude it based on that empirical evidence. But what if the 10,001 is black? This one fall off because it's not all swan anymore. That's how the black swan hypothesis going in the science. That's why science keep moving up. Science keep moving up, collecting data, more and more data, more variants of ideas. It can show up limitation. And this, without this induction, to have some sort of the ideas as the well-structured streamline of knowledge, all swan are white, we cannot do deduction and we cannot do abduction anymore. So this thing is the most important one, right? Well-structured. Like for example, with biology, we all accept that we're Darwinianism, right? Darwinian. We don't accept that the theory of evolution. We all species on Earth have a connection, right? And they all have somehow connect together and they have some evaluation and structure from cell and DNA. Remember that the topic we talked about last year about what the meaning of life, right? Or what is life from a physiologist. It all start from cell and start from DNA sort of information and growing up. And we human being with fungus and closer with other vegetable and we and chimpanzee is something sharing idea. So all construct in the one first induction, that is the Darwinian theories of evolution. So that's why if the theory of evolution fail, all the science related to that fail. Basically, that's how this works. And that's why they gotta go through, keep proving that and keep drawing a boundary, that which one we can prove it, which one we cannot prove. That is scientific thinking. So that induction and deduction and abduction. We have experimental design, basically create a design experiment and put it on the sample and test it, and then see how it's work. Causal reasoning, just try to see which lead to what the relationship between different variables, different things, different phenomena, and which one decide of which is a causal relationship, or it's just correlation. It's just some sort of relationship. We don't know it yet, but it have relationship. And a concept formation, create the whole concept of idea, which you go bigger into the theories. And the testing hypothesis, of course, they coming up. Go back with the experimental design, so that how the scientific thinking keep like a well-rounded system. But the important is you got to have reasoning, you got to have testing, and you have to have a design. There's another part of that, something related to education is in here. With Zimmerman 2007. Zimmerman actually come up with his colleges with a couple more study about try to improve the scientific thinking in the school level, which is like P12 primary school children, and even citizen science, which is when covered in a later slide, related to people who unprofessional scientists but still can think scientifically, because that's how they construct the belief and construct the right representative of fact in the systematic of human knowledge, basically. And the idea they put it profiles in Zimmerman 2007, it is reasoning and thinking skill, right? Involved in scientific inquiry, basically, is that the different represent of scientific thinking based on reasoning, based on hypothesis generation, which is hypothesis creation, experimental design, the same thing, evidence evaluation, which is we need to have that too, and drawing inferences. So we now can see that scientific thinking is outside of science, right? But it also go into the application of science and whatever topics and field of study that science can reach out. Pretty much everything now, except something science cannot reach out. We call it pseudoscience, mysticism, and religion, right? Outside of theology. And some metaphysics, philosophy. This cannot touch with scientific thinking, but we can touch it with some philosophical thinking, which is we can cover in the external worldview topics. But anything else, politics, social, economic, laws and regulation, human behavior, cultural, geography, biology, right, cosmology, astrophysics, whatever it is, education, child education, right? Life and death, whatever can cover by science can go through by scientific thinking. And we keep testing. We keep checking on the pseudoscience that we cannot check by scientific thinking, but we keep checking, keep testing to see if that can explain by scientific thinking or not. But the first rule that you got to test to know is it's belong to science or not, or something else out there.